are you? And welcome to the last of the video lectures of 2020. Thank God 2020 is almost over. We will be back in 2021. Today I'm talking about American culture in the Gilded Age, okay? One of the things that did not really exist before this time is anything that we can call American culture. We are a young nation and we didn't have a lot of traditions yet. And industrialization changes this because before this, most people are farmers. And if you're a farmer, you have to work on the farm and you work many hours and you work sun up to sundown and you don't have a chance really to do any activities outside of farming. But with an industrial culture and increased transportation and the ability of people to get places, especially trains and trains within cities, i.e. subways or elevated trains, and the idea that people were starting to work less and less towards the end of the century. Now, a lot of factory workers still worked a lot, but as we were getting to the turn of the century and going into the beginning of the 20th century, workers will be advocating for less hours and a weekend, which is going to be coming, is going to mean more leisure time. And if people have leisure time, they want to entertain themselves. You guys are more than familiar with that, obviously. So we move on to what are some of the things that happened, all right? First of all is literature. Now, literature is the one thing that would have existed even before the Civil War. James Fenimore Cooper is one of the early great American writers. However, the great American writers come after the Civil War. The greatest of all time, my opinion, Mark Twain. I know some of you have been reading The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Ernest Hemingway says it is the most important book in American history and the best book that has ever been written in American history. But the key here is it focuses on realism, and that is a continuing theme on a lot of the things that you're going to see here in terms of American culture. In other words, the dialect, what was happening, it was real. It wasn't a made-up story. It was how things were. The other theme was naturalism, and Jack London typified this in a great novel called The Call of the Wild. If you don't want to read it, Harrison Ford just made an awesome remake of the movie. It's worth a watch if you haven't seen it. So art reflects literature, literature reflects art, realism in art. People wanted to see what things were as a fact, all right? Winslow Homer was one of the most famous painters after the Civil War. He was famous for seascapes. You will see his paintings in many museums around the country. Whistler's Mother is perhaps one of the most recognizable paintings in American history other than American Gothic. And again, it's just a woman, his mother, sitting in a chair, but realism, almost a photograph, which again, photography is around at this time, so you can kind of see the influence. And then the other school of art, other than the Hudson River Valley School of Art, is the Ashcan School of Art. It's the only other major art school in American history, and it's just urban settings, urban scenes, urban street scenes, urban social scenes, kind of the tough, gritty, new urban American life. Again, realism in art. Architecture is going to follow the same thing. Naturalism, perhaps the most famous architect after the Civil War is Frank Lloyd Wright. This is Falling Water, but you don't have to go outside the great state of Illinois to find many examples of Frank Lloyd Wright architecture, as he was well known around the Oak Brook area, and he built many buildings in the Chicagoland area. He was actually a student of John L. Sullivan, Louis Sullivan, and Louis Sullivan is perhaps the most famous architectural saying, form follows function. In other words, the form of a building should follow what its function is. This led directly to the first skyscraper, and skyscrapers will become the most common American building. When you see a skyscraper, you think American, even when you see them in other countries.